Welcome to Crime Bedtime, your go-to channel for chilling, true crime bedtime stories. So snuggle up, close your eyes, and let the stories unfold. Today we will be talking about the Jasmine Richardson case. The Richardson family lived in the quiet, close-knit community of Medicine Hat, Alberta. Known for its friendly atmosphere and picturesque landscapes, the town provided an idyllic setting for many of its residents, including the Richardsons. The family consisted of Marc Richardson, his wife Debra, their daughter Jasmine, and their youngest son, Jacob. Marc Richardson was a well-respected electrical engineer who worked hard to provide for his family. He was a loving and devoted father, deeply involved in his children's lives. Marc enjoyed outdoor activities, often taking the family on camping trips to explore Alberta's natural beauty. His dedication to his work and family made him a well-regarded figure in the community. Debra Richardson was a social worker known for her compassion and dedication to helping others. She balanced her professional responsibilities with her role as a nurturing mother. Debra was involved in various community activities, including local charity events and parent-teacher associations. Her warm and caring nature made her a beloved member of the community. Jasmine, often described as a bright and outgoing girl, was the oldest of the Richardson children. She excelled academically and participated in several extracurricular activities, including sports and arts programs. Jasmine was well liked by her peers and teachers, forming a close-knit group of friends. Jacob, the youngest member of the family, was an energetic and curious boy who adored his older sister. He looked up to Jasmine and often followed her around, eager to participate in her activities. Jacob was known for his cheerful demeanor and love for playing with neighborhood kids, sharing a special bond with both his parents and sister. The Richardson family was the epitome of a loving middle-class family. Marc and Debra's supportive and encouraging parenting style fostered an environment where their children felt safe and cherished. They emphasized the importance of education, respect, and kindness, instilling these values in Jasmine and Jacob from a young age. The Richardsons were active participants in their community, often seen at local events and gatherings. Marc and Debra encouraged their children to be involved in community activities, believing it was important for them to develop a sense of civic duty and social responsibility. Their home was a popular spot for social interactions, hosting neighborhood barbecues and gatherings that fostered a sense of camaraderie among their neighbors. Despite experiencing typical teenage challenges, Jasmine had a typical adolescent relationship with her parents. She respected and loved them, though she occasionally exhibited moments of rebellion and a desire for independence. Her relationship with her brother Jacob was affectionate, often looking out for him and enjoying their time together. Jasmine Richardson's encounter with Jeremy Steinke marked the beginning of a dark and tragic chapter in her life. At 12 years old, Jasmine was navigating the tumultuous period of early adolescence, a time characterized by a search for identity and independence. During this vulnerable phase, she met Jeremy Steinke, a 23-year-old man, through mutual friends involved in the local goth subculture. Jeremy and Jasmine initially connected at social gatherings and events frequented by goth enthusiasts. Their shared interests in goth music, fashion, and alternative culture provided common ground, fostering a rapid connection. Online platforms, including social networking sites and goth forums, further facilitated their interactions, allowing them to communicate extensively and bond over their mutual interests. Jeremy Steinke's background was marked by a troubled and unstable upbringing. Born to a teenage mother, Jeremy experienced a chaotic childhood filled with neglect and emotional turmoil. His mother struggled with substance abuse, and Jeremy frequently moved between different homes and schools, leading to a lack of stability in his formative years. Jeremy was diagnosed with multiple mental health disorders, including depression and borderline personality disorder, which contributed to his feelings of alienation and anger. He adopted a goth persona, characterized by dark clothing, heavy makeup, and an interest in macabre themes. This persona was both a means of self-expression and a way to cope with his internal struggles. One of the more disturbing aspects of Jeremy's delusional beliefs was his self-identification as a 300-year-old werewolf. He embraced this fantasy wholeheartedly, often discussing it with Jasmine and incorporating it into their shared narratives. The relationship between Jasmine and Jeremy quickly intensified, evolving from casual conversations to an emotionally charged and codependent bond. Despite the significant age difference, Jasmine was drawn to Jeremy's rebellious and enigmatic personality, which stood in stark contrast to her structured and conventional family life. Jeremy, on the other hand, was captivated by Jasmine's youthful innocence and vulnerability, seeing in her a kindred spirit who shared his disdain for societal norms. Jeremy's influence on Jasmine was profound and pervasive. He began to dominate her thoughts and actions, encouraging her to adopt a more rebellious attitude and to distance herself from her family and friends. Under his influence, Jasmine's behavior changed noticeably. She started dressing in goth attire, listening to darker music, and exhibiting defiant behavior. Her grades began to slip, and she became more withdrawn from her previously close-knit family. The significant age difference between Jasmine and Jeremy played a crucial role in the dynamics of their relationship. At just 12 years old, Jasmine lacked the emotional maturity and life experience to navigate a relationship with an adult man. Jeremy's age and life experiences gave him a position of power and authority, which he used to manipulate and control Jasmine. Jeremy's maturity and ability to articulate their shared fantasies gave him an influential edge in their relationship. He played on Jasmine's teenage angst and desire for independence, presenting himself as the only person who truly understood and accepted her. This manipulation deepened Jasmine's emotional attachment to him, further alienating her from her family and friends. As their relationship deepened, so did the dark fantasies they shared. They frequently discussed themes of violence and rebellion, both online and in person. Jeremy's delusions and fascination with dark themes resonated with Jasmine's teenage curiosity and desire for excitement. Their conversations took a sinister turn as they began to fantasize about eliminating those they saw as obstacles to their happiness, namely Jasmine's family. These dark fantasies became a focal point of their relationship, blurring the lines between reality and imagination. Jeremy's influence over Jasmine led her to believe that their violent plans were a legitimate solution to her perceived problems. After meeting Jeremy Steinke, Jasmine Richardson underwent a dramatic transformation that shocked those who knew her. Prior to their encounter, Jasmine was known as a bright, outgoing girl with a positive attitude towards school and her social life. She was well liked by her peers and teachers, and her family described her as loving and affectionate. However, her relationship with Jeremy marked the beginning of a descent into darkness, marked by significant changes in her behavior and personality. Jasmine's behavior became increasingly rebellious after she started dating Jeremy. She began to openly defy her parents' rules and express disdain for their authority. Her grades, which had previously been commendable, started to slip as she became more preoccupied with her new relationship and the goth subculture. Jasmine began skipping school, lying about her whereabouts, and staying out late, behaviors that were entirely out of character for her. At home, Jasmine's interactions with her family grew more strained. She became secretive and withdrawn, spending most of her time in her room or communicating with Jeremy online. Her parents, Marc and Debra, noticed these changes and became increasingly concerned, leading to frequent arguments and tension within the household. Jeremy introduced Jasmine to the goth subculture, which became a significant aspect of her identity. This subculture, characterized by its dark aesthetic and themes of morbidity, appealed to Jasmine's growing sense of rebellion and desire to stand out. She began dressing in all-black clothing, wearing heavy makeup, and adopting a more somber and dramatic appearance. This transformation was starkly different from her previous, more conventional style. Jasmine's fascination with goth culture extended beyond her appearance. She started listening to goth and industrial music, which often featured dark, brooding lyrics that resonated with her new outlook on life. She also began exploring goth literature and art, immersing herself in themes of death, despair, and rebellion. This newfound interest provided her with a sense of belonging and identity, further distancing her from her former self. Jasmine's relationship with Jeremy also fueled her interest in dark and violent themes. Their conversations, both in person and online, frequently revolved around macabre subjects and fantasies of rebellion against societal norms. Jeremy's belief in being a 300-year-old werewolf and his fascination with dark themes had a profound influence on Jasmine. She became enamored with these fantastical elements, incorporating them into her own worldview. Online interactions played a significant role in the development of Jasmine's darker interests. She spent a considerable amount of time on social networking sites and forums dedicated to goth and alternative lifestyles. These platforms provided her with a space to explore and express her new identity, connecting with others who shared similar interests. However, they also exposed her to more extreme and disturbing content, which further fueled her descent into darkness. Friends and teachers began to notice the drastic changes in Jasmine's behavior and personality. Friends who had known her before her relationship with Jeremy expressed concern over her transformation. They observed that she had become more withdrawn, moody, and preoccupied with her new goth persona. Some friends attempted to reach out to her, but Jasmine's increasing isolation and devotion to Jeremy made it difficult for them to reconnect. Teachers, too, saw a significant shift in Jasmine's demeanor and academic performance. Once an engaged and enthusiastic student, she became disengaged and distracted in class. Her grades suffered and her participation in school activities dwindled. Teachers reported that she seemed more distant and less interested in her studies, raising alarms about her well-being. Jasmine's online interactions with Jeremy and others in the goth community played a crucial role in her descent into darkness. She and Jeremy frequently communicated through social media and instant messaging, where they shared their darkest thoughts and fantasies. These online exchanges often reinforced their rebellious and violent ideas, creating a feedback loop that intensified their bond and their detachment from reality. Jasmine's online presence reflected her new identity. She adopted goth-inspired usernames and profiles, posting content that echoed the dark themes she was exploring. Her social media activity became a window into her evolving mindset, showcasing her fascination with rebellion, death, and despair. The conspiracy between Jasmine Richardson and Jeremy Steinke to murder her family was a chilling culmination of their dark fantasies and distorted reality. Their plan to carry out the murders was not a spontaneous act, but a premeditated and meticulously discussed scheme that unfolded over several weeks. The seeds of the plan were sown through their extensive communications, both in person and online. Jeremy, already harboring violent tendencies and dark fantasies, found a willing and impressionable partner in Jasmine. Their conversations, initially focused on shared interests and rebellious ideas, gradually escalated to discussions about eliminating Jasmine's family, whom they perceived as obstacles to their relationship. The primary mode of their sinister communications was through social networking sites and instant messaging platforms. In these digital spaces, they exchanged messages that laid bare their intentions and planning. Jasmine, under Jeremy's influence, expressed increasing hatred toward her parents and younger brother, describing them as impediments to her freedom and happiness with Jeremy. Their conversations grew increasingly explicit and violent. Jeremy often referred to himself as a 300-year-old werewolf, and this fantastical delusion seeped into their planning. He used his supposed supernatural identity to reinforce the notion that their actions were justified and even destined. This blending of fantasy and reality created a dangerous mindset where the murders seemed like a natural extension of their shared beliefs. Jeremy's manipulative influence over Jasmine was evident in their communications. He frequently urged her to take action, framing the murders as a necessary step for their future together. Jasmine, seeking approval and validation from Jeremy, began to internalize these ideas, further fueling her willingness to participate in the plan. The details of their plan were discussed and refined over multiple conversations. They considered various methods for carrying out the murders, ultimately deciding on a brutal and direct approach. The plan was set to be executed on the night of April 23, 2006. The early stages of the plan involved fantasizing about different ways to kill Jasmine's family. They exchanged ideas on how to ensure the murders were swift and effective. These discussions were filled with graphic details and a disturbing level of enthusiasm, indicating a deep-seated desire to see their plan come to fruition. Jeremy and Jasmine assigned themselves specific roles in the execution of the plan. Jeremy, being the older and physically stronger of the two, would carry out the actual killings. Jasmine's role was to assist him by ensuring that her family was unaware and vulnerable when Jeremy arrived. This division of labor underscored Jeremy's dominant role in the conspiracy and Jasmine's complicity. They planned to use knives as their primary weapons. Jeremy, who had a fascination with blades, chose a large knife for himself, while Jasmine selected a smaller knife. They discussed how they would use these weapons to inflict maximum harm and ensure the deaths of Jasmine's family members. The timing of the murders was carefully chosen to coincide with a night when Jasmine's parents would be asleep, reducing the likelihood of resistance. They decided that Jeremy would sneak into the Richardson home in the early hours of the morning. Jasmine would leave a basement window unlocked for Jeremy to enter. This way he could access the house without alerting her parents. After the murders, they planned to run away together, believing they could escape the consequences of their actions. They fantasized about a life of freedom, away from the constraints and disapproval of Jasmine's family. This escapist fantasy was a crucial motivator for their actions, providing a distorted sense of hope and justification for their heinous plan. The motivations behind the murders were a complex interplay of emotional, psychological, and situational factors. Jasmine's desire to rebel against her parents' authority played a significant role. She felt trapped and controlled by her family, and the relationship with Jeremy provided an outlet for her frustrations. Jeremy's influence magnified these feelings, making the idea of murder seem like a path to liberation. Jeremy's manipulation of Jasmine cannot be understated. He used his age, experience, and charisma to control her thoughts and actions. His delusional beliefs and dark fantasies resonated with Jasmine's teenage angst, creating a toxic dynamic where she sought his approval and guidance, even in contemplating murder. Both Jasmine and Jeremy struggled to distinguish between their dark fantasies and reality. Their obsession with goth culture and violent themes desensitized them to the gravity of their plans. The delusional belief in Jeremy's supernatural identity further distorted their perception, making the murders seem like a legitimate and necessary act. The promise of a new life together was a powerful motivator. They envisioned a future free from parental control and societal norms, where they could live out their fantasies without interference. This shared delusion provided a twisted sense of purpose and direction, propelling them toward the murders. As the night of April 22, 2006, settled over Medicine Hat, Alberta, the Richardson family prepared for bed, unaware of the horrific events that would soon unfold. Marc and Debra Richardson, along with their young son Jacob, had no inkling that their peaceful suburban home would soon be the scene of unspeakable violence. Jasmine Richardson, the family's 12-year-old daughter, had unlocked a basement window earlier that day, setting the stage for the gruesome plan she and her boyfriend Jeremy Steinke had meticulously crafted. Jeremy, 23 years old and filled with dark fantasies, approached the house under the cover of darkness. Dressed in black and armed with a large knife, he slipped through the window and into the basement, where Marc Richardson lay asleep. The quiet of the night was shattered by the sounds of struggle. Marc, a devoted father and loving husband, awoke to find an intruder in his home. The two men grappled in the dim light, Marc fighting desperately to defend himself and his family. But Jeremy's attack was savage and relentless. The knife flashed in the darkness, and Marc was overcome by the brutal assault. His body, bloodied and broken, lay in the basement, a tragic testament to his final, valiant effort to protect his loved ones. Upstairs, Debra Richardson heard the commotion and rushed downstairs, her heart pounding with fear. She found her husband lying lifeless and Jeremy standing over him, the knife still in his hand. Debra's scream echoed through the house as she lunged at Jeremy, driven by a mother's instinct to protect her family. But Jeremy was merciless. He turned his blade on Debra, and despite her frantic attempts to fight back, she too fell victim to his murderous rage. Her body was discovered near Marc's, a heartbreaking symbol of her bravery and love. While his parents fought for their lives, 8-year-old Jacob remained asleep in his bed, blissfully unaware of the horror unfolding around him. After killing Marc and Debra, Jeremy made his way upstairs to Jacob's room. "Jasmine," having facilitated the entry and the attacks, now stood by as her little brother faced the same fate. Jacob, startled awake by the intruder, had no chance to defend himself. Jeremy, with Jasmine's involvement, brutally ended the life of the innocent boy who adored his older sister. Jacob's small body, stabbed multiple times, was found in his bed, a stark and devastating conclusion to the night's violence. The following morning, the quiet suburban neighborhood awoke to a nightmare. A young boy, a friend of Jacob's, approached the Richardson home, eager to play. When no one answered the door, he peered through a window and was met with a scene of horror, the lifeless bodies of Marc and Debra Richardson. Terrified, he ran home and told his mother, who immediately contacted the police. Police arrived swiftly, their initial concern being the missing daughter, Jasmine. The Richardson home was cordoned off, and investigators began the grim task of piecing together the events of the previous night. The scene inside the house was chaotic and blood-soaked, evidence of the brutal and frenzied nature of the attacks. As investigators moved through the house, they discovered the bodies of Marc and Debra in the basement, and Jacob in his bedroom. Each room told a story of desperation and violence. Bloodstains, overturned furniture, and discarded weapons painted a picture of a horrific struggle for survival. The police quickly realized that Jasmine was not among the dead, and an urgent search for her began, initially fearing she might have been abducted. As dawn broke on April 23, 2006, the tranquil streets of Medicine Hat were disrupted by the flashing lights of police cars and the hushed whispers of shocked neighbors. The gruesome discovery of the Richardson family's murder had sent shockwaves through the community. The immediate focus for the police was to locate the missing daughter, Jasmine Richardson, fearing she might be another victim or a witness who could unlock the mystery of what had happened. Inside the Richardson home, the scene was chaotic and blood-soaked. Marc and Debra Richardson lay lifeless in the basement, victims of a frenzied attack. Upstairs, 8-year-old Jacob was found in his bed, brutally murdered. Amidst the horror, one unsettling detail stood out: Jasmine was nowhere to be found. As investigators combed through the house, a clearer picture of the night's events began to take shape. Forensic experts meticulously documented the scene. Bloodstains, the positions of the bodies, and the discarded knives told a story of a violent struggle. Marc had clearly fought desperately to protect his family, as evidenced by the signs of a fierce battle in the basement. A significant breakthrough came when investigators accessed the family's computers. They uncovered a trove of online messages between Jasmine and Jeremy Steinke, a 23-year-old man. These communications were chilling, revealing a sinister plot hatched over weeks. The messages spoke of hatred, rebellion, and a desire to eliminate Jasmine's obstacles her family. As the investigation progressed, forensic analysis of the crime scene yielded crucial physical evidence. Blood found on Jeremy's clothing and knife matched that of the victims, directly implicating him in the murders. This concrete evidence was vital in piecing together the sequence of events. The investigation also relied heavily on witness statements, painting a fuller picture of the dark journey that led to the tragic night. Neighbors and friends' neighbors recounted hearing noises on the night of the murders, thumps and muffled cries that they initially dismissed as ordinary household sounds. Friends of Jasmine provided valuable insights into her recent behavior. They described her transformation after meeting Jeremy, from a cheerful, well-adjusted girl to someone fascinated by goth culture and dark themes. School and community members, teachers and classmates echoed these sentiments. They spoke of Jasmine's sudden change in demeanor and her growing defiance. The once bright and engaged student had become withdrawn, her schoolwork suffering as she spent more time with Jeremy, both in person and online. The search for Jasmine and Jeremy ended swiftly. Less than a day after the murders, the police tracked them down to Jeremy's truck. They were attempting to flee, but their escape was short-lived. Both were taken into custody without incident. During questioning, their demeanor was chilling. Jeremy was almost boastful, while Jasmine's detachment shocked the investigators. Jasmine's trial, held under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, reflected the delicate balance between seeking justice for the horrific crime and recognizing the potential for rehabilitation in a young offender. In the dimly lit courtroom, the prosecution meticulously laid out their case. They projected the disturbing online exchanges between Jasmine and Jeremy onto a large screen, each message more chilling than the last. The jurors listened in stunned silence as the prosecutor read aloud the words of a 12-year-old girl planning the murder of her family. She knew what she was doing, the prosecutor asserted, pointing to the methodical nature of the plan. This wasn't a whim, it was premeditated murder. The defense countered with a narrative of a vulnerable child ensnared by a manipulative older man. Jasmine's defense attorney, a woman with a calm, empathetic demeanor, spoke softly but firmly. Jasmine was a child, she reminded the court. She was 12 years old, impressionable, and deeply influenced by Jeremy Steinke's control over her. Psychologists testified about Jasmine's emotional immaturity and her susceptibility to Jeremy's dark influence. They described her as a young girl who had lost her way, ensnared by a fantasy world she couldn't fully understand. The courtroom listened intently as experts discussed Jasmine's psychological state. They spoke of her struggle to separate reality from the macabre fantasies Jeremy had introduced her to. They painted a picture of a girl desperate for acceptance, caught in a toxic relationship that clouded her judgment and led her down a path of no return. Friends and teachers took the stand, their voices trembling as they recounted Jasmine's transformation. They spoke of a bright, cheerful girl who became increasingly withdrawn and fascinated by dark themes. They described the fear they felt as they watched her drift further into Jeremy's influence. A friend tearfully recounted a conversation where Jasmine had spoken about her hatred for her family, a stark contrast to the loving daughter and sister they had known. The friend's voice broke as she said, "I didn't believe her then. I couldn't believe she would ever do something like this." After days of emotional testimony and stark evidence, the jury delivered their verdict. Jasmine Richardson was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. Due to her age, the judge sentenced her to the maximum allowable under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, 10 years in prison, with 4 of those to be served in a psychiatric institution and the remaining under conditional supervision. Jeremy's trial was a stark contrast to Jasmine's. Held under adult criminal court, it focused on the full weight of his responsibility and the chilling nature of his actions. The prosecution portrayed Jeremy as the architect of the grisly murders. They detailed his troubled past, his dark fantasies, and his manipulation of a young girl. The graphic evidence, including the blood-stained knife and forensic details, painted a horrifying picture. Jeremy Steinke is not a victim, the prosecutor declared. He is a predator who took advantage of a vulnerable child to fulfill his dark desires. Jeremy's defense tried to humanize him, presenting his troubled childhood and mental health issues. They argued that his belief in being a 300-year-old werewolf and his fascination with death were symptoms of deep-seated psychological problems. Jeremy is deeply disturbed, his attorney pleaded. He needs help, not just punishment. Psychologists testified about Jeremy's severe mental health issues. They described his delusions, his identity as a werewolf, and his inability to fully grasp the reality of his actions. However, the prosecution countered with evidence of Jeremy's clear planning and awareness of his crimes. Witnesses spoke about Jeremy's influence over Jasmine, his manipulative nature, and his previous violent tendencies. The courtroom heard from friends who had seen Jeremy's dark side and from experts who explained how his mental state could lead to such brutal actions. The jury found Jeremy Steinke guilty on all counts. Given the heinous nature of the crimes and his manipulative role, the judge sentenced Jeremy to 3 concurrent life sentences without the possibility of parole for 25 years. As the sentence was read, the courtroom was filled with a somber silence, reflecting the gravity of his actions and the devastation left in their wake. The brutal murders of the Richardson family pierced the heart of the community, leaving a wound that would take years to heal. In the days following the tragedy, the town was enveloped in a somber silence. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, their faces etched with disbelief and sorrow. The local church became a sanctuary for many, offering solace to those grappling with the unimaginable. Vigils were held, where candles flickered in the night, casting long shadows that seemed to echo the community's grief. People gathered to share stories and memories of Marc, Debra, and little Jacob, seeking comfort in their collective mourning. For the surviving family members, the loss was profound and all-encompassing. Marc and Debra's relatives were plunged into a deep well of sorrow, struggling to comprehend the violent end of their loved ones. The knowledge that Jasmine, a child they had known and loved, was involved in the murders added a layer of complex grief and confusion. They found themselves oscillating between anger, sorrow, and a desperate need for answers. Friends of the Richardson family were equally devastated. Jacob's playmates could not fathom that their friend was gone, his laughter silenced forever. Teachers and classmates who had seen Jasmine's bright smile were haunted by the transformation she underwent. Counseling sessions were organized at schools, where children spoke of their fears and confusion, trying to make sense of the darkness that had touched their lives. The Richardson case reverberated far beyond the borders of Medicine Hat, sparking a national conversation about youth crime, the influence of older individuals on minors, and the pervasive role of the internet in young people's lives. The involvement of Jasmine, a mere 12-year-old, in such a heinous crime forced society to confront uncomfortable questions about how to deal with young offenders. News outlets and talk shows buzzed with debates about whether children should be treated as adults when they commit such serious crimes. Jasmine's trial, conducted under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, underscored the legal system's struggle to balance justice with the possibility of rehabilitation. Psychologists and child advocates argued passionately about the potential for young people to change, emphasizing the importance of understanding the underlying factors that lead to such actions. Jasmine's case became a pivotal point in discussions about the need for tailored rehabilitation programs for young offenders, focusing on mental health and the impacts of manipulation by older, more influential individuals. In a world where the internet was becoming an integral part of daily life, the case highlighted the dark side of online interactions. Jasmine and Jeremy's relationship had thrived in the shadowy corners of the internet, where their disturbing fantasies could grow unchecked. Parents across the country found themselves looking at their children's online activities with new, fearful eyes. Schools and community groups began to hold workshops on internet safety, teaching children and parents about the potential dangers lurking online. The Richardson case became a stark reminder of how easily young minds could be influenced and led astray in the vast, unregulated digital world. As months turned into years, Medicine Hat began to slowly heal. The community spirit, though bruised, was not broken. The memorials for the Richardson family became places of quiet reflection, where people could remember the lives lost and reaffirm their commitment to protecting their own children from similar fates. The tragedy left an indelible mark on Medicine Hat, a reminder of the fragility of innocence and the insidious power of negative influence. It brought about a collective resolve to be more vigilant, more understanding, and more supportive of young people navigating the turbulent waters of adolescence. The story of the Richardson family, while steeped in sorrow, also became a catalyst for change, prompting a society to take a closer look at the vulnerabilities of its youth and the ways to safeguard their futures. Now it's time to slowly drift into sleep. Close your eyes, let go, and allow sleep to gently carry you away into a night of sweet dreams and restful slumber.